Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this latest IIEA webinar, which is part of the Future Proofing of Europe project, which is supported by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And we're delighted to be joined today by Minister Raouna, Deputy Minister for European Affairs of Cyprus, who has been good enough to take time out of her busy schedule to speak to us. And Minister Raouna will speak to us for about 20 minutes or so, and then we will go to the question and answer with our audience. And as usual, you will be able to join the discussion using the Q&A function on Zoom, which is on your screen. And of course, please feel free to send your questions in throughout the session as they occur to you, and we will come to them once we finish the address part of the webinar. And a reminder that today's presentation and the Q&A are both on the record. And you can also join with Twitter using the handle at IIEA. IIEA. In her speech, Minister Raouna will acknowledge that enlargement has long been one of the EU's most powerful transformative tools and a driving force for reform, progress, security, and prosperity. This is so particularly in the case of Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. And she will also argue that it is clear that enlargement is a geopolitical investment and a necessity for stability, peace and security in the European Union. And also it is the case, Minister Raouna believes that enlargement also re-emerges as a key policy for strengthening the EU's strategic autonomy and global influence. So with that introduction, let me formally introduce the Deputy Minister and then hand over for her address. Minister Raouna is the Cypriot Deputy Minister for European Affairs in charge of the preparations and political oversight of Cyprus Presidency of the Council of EU in the first half of 2026. She studied law at Oxford University and holds an LLM in public and international and European law from the London School of Economics and Political Science and a diploma in French language and civilization from Sorbonne University. Previously, she worked for the European Commission at the Director General for Justice, Security and Freedom and at the Permanent Representation of Cyprus to the EU. And prior to this, she served at the Cypriot Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a special advisor to the minister and then as EU Sherpa in the diplomatic office of the President of Cyprus. Her work is focused inter alia on EU affairs, EU-Turkey relations and EU enlargement. And she has also participated in the UN negotiations for a comprehensive settlement of the Cypriot question, focusing on EU matters. And Minister, with that, what is an extremely impressive career, may I hand over to you now to address us on the topic of enlargement. I know the Cypriot Presidency has many priorities, security and defence, but certainly enlargement and the strategic autonomy you will speak to us about are high on the agenda. So you're most welcome again, and we look forward to hearing your address. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now, yes, thank you.
Very well. Madam Cross, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and to everyone who joined. I am absolutely delighted to join all of you, even if only virtually, from sunny Nicosia, here from the European Union's southeasternmost corner. Cyprus and Ireland stand at seemingly opposite ends of our continent, thousands of miles apart. And yet, Cyprus and Ireland are united by so much more than meets the eye. Island countries with common historical references. We have both endured division, and Cyprus continues to endure division and occupation. Both member states know the value of peace. And today, we stand united as members of our large European family, united by a common purpose and a shared direction under our flag with 12 golden stars. And this is what the European Union is about, bringing together European nations that may be geographically distant, but they are close at heart and united by values and a shared destiny. With the Cyprus presidency of the Council just around the corner, we are today exactly 37 days to the presidency. This exchange couldn't be more timely. In this regard, I want to sincerely thank the Institute of International and European Affairs for organizing this exchange. I believe it's an invaluable opportunity for Cyprus and Ireland as two consecutive presidencies of the Council to reflect together on one of the EU's most urgent and most transformative priorities: enlargement as an instrument and an indispensable component of the EU's strategic autonomy. The Cyprus presidency comes at what I believe to be an inflection point for our Union and for Europe. We are navigating one of the most complex, shifting geopolitical landscapes in recent history. The world around us is changing fast, in some cases brutally so. With war and instability on two sides of the Union's borders, Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine, and the instability in the Middle East. This is without a doubt a moment of responsibility, from security, defense, competitiveness, and social cohesion to energy, climate, and migration, to our role as a union, as a global actor. Now is the time to deliver. And Cyprus is determined to seize this moment with ambition for a presidency that will deliver tangible results. As I mentioned, Cyprus will be assuming the presidency as the Union's only last member state under military occupation, a member state that understands very well the stakes on issues of security, on upholding multilateralism, international law, and the UN Charter at a time when there is a concerted effort to erode this system. At the same time, Cyprus is assuming the presidency as a country that is outward-looking, with a strong, resilient economy and a clear foreign policy orientation. And as a member state of the European Union that at the same time is an integral part of the wider Middle East, of the Eastern Mediterranean, a region of immense geostrategic importance, directly linked with our strategic priorities as a union for increased competitiveness, for energy diversification, and a region where Cyprus stands as a reliable, stable, and predictable partner. A country that has consistently acted as a bridge between this region and the European Union, a country that is able to bring its strategic allies even closer and tap into these relationships to strengthen the EU's role as a global actor. And we are assuming the presidency guided by a clear vision, a union that is strategically independent, an autonomous union that is open to the world, a union that is resilient, that can take care of its security, a union where values that form our cornerstone meet our interests. At the same time, in the midst of turmoil and unpredictability, the union must stand as a stable and reliable actor, one that is committed to multilateralism and to rules-based international order. And enlargement lies at the heart of this vision, and it will be a key priority of the Cyprus presidency. Ladies and gentlemen, I was thinking hard about how to introduce today's topic, from which angle to approach it. Enlargement is our core theme, yes, but to be honest, and this is captured in the title of the event, we are talking about something that is far greater and broader. We're talking about how Europe can stand taller in a turbulent world, safer, and how it can become a catalyst for stability in its immediate region and beyond. Because enlargement today is not just about completing a map. It is about completing a vision. It is essentially about reunifying Europe, expanding our space of democracy, stability, and prosperity. It is about bringing our future member states from Ukraine, Moldova, the Western Balkans, closer to our union of values. And it is also about the European model being one that countries aspire to be, that countries still aspire to join. Enlargement has proven time and again to be one of the European Union's most transformative tools, a driving force for reforms, progress, and prosperity. And it is a path that is arduous, that requires hard work, steadfast commitment by the governments and the people of our enlargement partners, but it is also a path that is absolutely worth walking. And above all, for these countries, it is a promise of security, stability, and prosperity. And Cyprus knows this all too well. We are one of the smaller member states at the EU's periphery, and we know firsthand what it means to place your future within the European family. Cyprus remembers we only joined over 22 years ago. We know that we have benefited, and we remember how much we have benefited from accession. We have experienced in every aspect of life the transformative effects of this process for our economy, for our security, for rule of law, for growth and job creation, to every aspect that touches the daily lives of citizens. And so has Ireland. Grounded in this lived experience, Cyprus has been and remains a staunch supporter of enlargement. And during our presidency, we are committed to act as an honest broker, as a constructive partner, to work together with our enlargement partners to deliver actual progress in their accession negotiations, to deliver tangible results. Madam Cross, you mentioned in your introductory remarks how following Russia's invasion against Ukraine, a sovereign country, how this has created a renewed momentum in enlargement, and that is true. At the same time, Russia's invasion has also changed Europe. We are witnessing not only war on European soil, we are witnessing also an attack on our very values, on the post-World War II system as we know it. This aggression has forced us to reimagine Europe's security architecture, but also to rediscover the original purpose of our union. And yes, it has rightly so given enlargement a renewed momentum. Because when the world becomes unpredictable, when the storm does not seem to pass, perhaps we must go back to basics, back to our values. When Europe, when our citizens ask questions of us, it is within these fundamental values that we find the answers. And at this moment, enlargement is one of the clearest expressions of that answer. Enlargement is not merely a technical process. It is a geostrategic tool for peace and security. And at this very moment, it is nothing short than a geopolitical necessity. By advancing the accession negotiations of Ukraine, Moldova, and the Western Balkans, we are investing in the security of our continent. We are extending this vital space of peace, democracy, and prosperity. This year has been a testament to this renewed momentum and progress in the enlargement process. Let's take Montenegro, that has taken leaps of progress in its accession path. And it stands as an example of how consistent reform efforts deliver tangible results and take the European integration journey forward. We are committed to supporting Montenegro's steady progress. During our presidency, we expect to provisionally close up to 10 chapters with IGCs, intergovernmental conferences, having been planned for March and June. At the same time, establishing and initiating the work of the ad hoc working party on the drafting of the accession treaty for Montenegro is a priority. This will give the signal for the first time since the accession of Croatia, when we had such a working group for the drafting of an accession treaty, that we have one candidate country that is extremely close to accession. It might be ambitious, but it is possible if reforms continue, if the political commitment is there, that Montenegro can be the 28th member state by 2028. And we will work towards this goal. Albania has also demonstrated impressive commitment, advancing key reforms at a rapid pace, with the ambition of its accession negotiations to be completed by the end of 2027. 7 intergovernmental conferences with Albania have already taken place, with 6 occurring within the last 12 months. That is indicative of the pace of the reforms that are taking place. And of course, implementation of the reforms is of utmost importance. During the Cyprus presidency, our aim is to reach consensus on the IBAR, the interim benchmark assessment reports for cluster 1 in the early spring, with an intergovernmental conference planned for March, and to provisionally close chapters, possibly 3 chapters, 20, 25, and 30 by June. This would mean that under the Cyprus presidency, we would signal that chapters are now closing, which is also important. Opening chapters is one thing and it's very important, but closing chapters is an important signal. 1.5 years following the opening of accession negotiations for Ukraine and Moldova, both countries have demonstrated commitment to their European path. Ukraine continues to work on advancing reforms despite the challenges, despite the immense strain of being a candidate country that is also fighting a war. Moldova remains firmly anchored to its reform agenda, pushing ahead with determination and courage in the face of hybrid threats and with great external pressures aimed at undermining its democratic institutions. We witnessed this recently in the September elections, where the country faced immense foreign interference at all fronts aimed at undermining the elections. President Sandu delivered an electoral victory firmly anchored to the country's European path. Elections will come up again in Moldova. And what is crucial is that we continue working on the accession negotiations, that Moldova continues delivering and the commitment is there, and that we show tangibly that we are advancing in their accession negotiations. As presidency, we are committed to overcoming the current impasse and moving forward with the accession negotiations of both countries, always, and this is not just for Ukraine and Moldova, it is for all candidate countries, always on the basis of merit-based process, of strict and fair conditionality. And we must always remember that enlargement, particularly now when we are in an unpredictable and multipolar geopolitical environment, enlargement negotiations is also a tool to reduce vulnerabilities in our neighborhood to external pressures. And as these pressures increase, as foreign interference increases, the European Union needs to ensure that this momentum that is created in the accession negotiations delivers for the countries, delivers for the citizens in these countries. Passing on to Serbia. Despite internal challenges, what the message we are getting from the leadership is that Serbia remains committed to its EU perspective. And where we see concrete demonstrations on that and progress in its reform process, we must, as European Union, reciprocate, again, based on merits. Despite the challenges, we need to keep Serbia close to the European Union, mindful of what is at stake, mindful of the difficulties in the country. As presidency, we will explore possibilities for further progress in Serbia's accession process, as well as on that of Bosnia and Herzegovina and North Macedonia. Enlargement is a security opportunity. And as you know, security and defense is one of the strategic priorities for the European Union. Enlargement strengthens our security agenda. It strengthens the resilience of our neighbors by reducing vulnerabilities to external pressures and interference, as I have mentioned, and it anchors them firmly in the European framework of stability and cooperation. In this respect, the alignment of our enlargement partners with the EU's common foreign policy and security policy is absolutely essential. It not only demonstrates a country's commitment to the EU's shared values and principles, but it is also a clear indication of the country's determination to advance on the European path and to actively contribute to the future of our European project. At the same time, enlargement, as we know all too well, is a two-way process, and it is already yielding results in bringing our enlargement partners closer to the EU and in supporting economic growth, strengthening rule of law, and in improving citizens' everyday lives. The growth plans for the Western Balkans and Moldova, with up to 8 billion in financial support, are already making a difference on the ground. they're also demonstrating to the citizens in this country that the EU is not just an aspiration, but it can also deliver throughout this path, not as a replacement to accession, but as a reinforcing vehicle to their efforts for reforms in their accession path. In January 2026, we will welcome Moldova and Ukraine in our free roaming zone. We must keep the momentum in the enlargement process credible, no matter how lengthy or difficult the path may be. It is about ensuring, and this is what gradual integration is about, it is about ensuring that the EU is already present, that it's already delivering, it's already supporting. It is also helping to shape a common European future. Going back to how enlargement and strategic autonomy are two overlapping circles. For many years, and I'm sure many of you have been part of those discussions, but for many years in Brussels and in our capitals, we debated almost philosophically about how to strengthen Europe's strategic autonomy. I think the Russian war against Ukraine has made that debate obsolete. European autonomy in all its facets, and this concerns not only our role as a global actor, it also concerns energy autonomy, trade autonomy. It concerns our social cohesion. And it is no longer debatable. It is no longer theoretical. It is an imperative need that we need to deliver all. Because the war in Ukraine has made our dependencies existential, whether that is from security and defense, competitiveness, trade, connectivity, but also other issues such as energy prices and housing, which are pressing social needs in our member states. It is clear that long-term resilience and autonomy go hand in hand. And our resilience and autonomy overlap with enlargement. They are not separate agendas. They are mutually reinforcing pillars on the same vision. A Europe that stands on its own feet, that is strong and competitive, that can take care of its own security and energy supply, that can defend its values and interests without dependencies. This is an enlarged union. Enlargement expands the union's political weight, its economic outreach, and collective capacity to respond to crisis. By advancing enlargement now, we strengthen Europe's strategic autonomy for the next generation, ensuring that it remains a stable, reliable, and strong actor. Ireland will assume the presidency of the Council right after Cyprus. And our two countries stand firmly united behind this shared vision. Both countries understand that a Europe strengthened by new member states is a stronger, safer, more prosperous Europe. We share the conviction that integrated, committed partners reinforces collective resilience, it stabilizes Europe's neighborhood, and contributes directly to the continent's long-term economic autonomy. Before I hand over the floor to all of you, I want to reiterate this. Cyprus is determined to work as presidency of the Council, as honest brokers with all partners, with all institutions, member states, as well as candidate countries, to keep the momentum in enlargement alive and to ensure that this time we actually deliver. Because the truth is that for too long, if we are to be honest, we made promises that we fell short of delivering, and that affects our credibility. At this moment, we cannot afford to go down this route. The momentum in enlargement is there, but it will not be open-ended or perpetual. Now is the moment to seize it and deliver on it. Because enlargement is not just about new member states joining our union. It is about renewing the union itself, its purpose, and its raison d'etre. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister Raouna. That was a very powerful address and a powerful argument for enlargement, and in particular, enlargement at this point in time for the Union. While we're waiting for some questions to come through, may I make a couple of points. I just wanted to ask you, how much support is there in the existing union for enlargement? One feels that in general, yes, but when you look more closely, that maybe there is not great enthusiasm in all member states. And I suppose particularly there are some existing member states that are holding up enlargement. For example, Bulgaria with regard to Northern Macedonia, and also, of course, Hungary is not supportive of the Ukrainian progress towards the EU, despite all the reasons that Ukraine should get a clear path and welcome. And Moldova is also held up. So what is your assessment of the enthusiasm among the existing member states? And will Cyprus in this priority get support from the existing members, 26?
Do I reply to this question? Do I take more? How would you like to?
Yes. No, if you just ask this one and I'll come on then with some other ones.
Sure. I would say that, and I've been following enlargement since 2010. I think if you look at the last 10, 15 years, we are at a point where there is more momentum than there has ever been over these last 10, 15 years. And I think that is, to an extent, understandable. In what regard? We had the 5th historic enlargement, where we have a record number of member states sitting in the European Union, including Cyprus. And that was a big wave of enlargement. And it is also true with all the benefits that 5th historic enlargement brought, that it also brought some enlargement fatigue in the European Union. And that is to be expected. Right now, after Ukraine, the momentum is not only in words, it's real. It is palpable in Brussels. We've seen developments that speak to the fact that there is real momentum. I mean, Ukraine, Moldova, Albania, the fact that within a year we've had 6 intergovernmental conferences. That's why I mentioned it in my speech. It's quite remarkable to have that amount of work in such a short period of time. Montenegro as well. So I think the momentum is there. There is support, because if there weren't support, we wouldn't have these developments, because it takes unanimity. Are there difficulties? Yes, there are difficulties, and that is also to be expected. You mentioned the example of North Macedonia, the challenges with regards to Ukraine and Moldova. I think the fact that for the first time we have this concept of front-loading in accession negotiations, which is because of the fact that we are not able to reach unanimity on having accession conferences for Ukraine and also for Moldova, because these two negotiations have been not formally but de facto politically coupled. Because of this, and because there is this commitment to advancing negotiations otherwise, we do the technical work, the Commission does the technical work on the various clusters and the chapters. It presents them at the technical level to the working groups. And in this way, once the political conditions are there, we will be able, in a very fast-tracked way, to proceed with the opening. And this will continue, and that will continue at least until February. There is sufficient work to do this front-loading of technical work, at least until February. At the same time, we need to work to reach consensus, to find ways to have consensus. I don't expect this to happen before the April elections in Hungary, but we as presidency, together with our partners, we need to work in a way that we create the conditions so that after the elections, we try to move to the next stage, which would be accession conferences. Now, with regards to North Macedonia, the position of the Council, and it's not just one member state, this is the Council position, is that the constitutional amendments which are part of the established conditionality, they must be adopted by North Macedonia, and then that would open the way for an intergovernmental conference immediately after, in order to have the adoption of the negotiating framework. And there is work underway so that we reach that point. If we don't reach that point by the end of the Danish presidency, we will exert all efforts to be on a path that will allow us to proceed with an intergovernmental conference and to have the formal adoption of the negotiating framework, which would then open the way for the opening of chapters.
Well, that looks very encouraging. I have quite a number of questions here. I might take two, Minister, together. One is with regard to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the other Ukraine. So Valerie Hughes, who's former Ireland Action for Bosnia, asks, regarding EU enlargement and Bosnia and Herzegovina, why is the EU pretending that they can avoid constitutional reform in Bosnia when they expect it of everybody else? Is it because they don't believe the country will ever be an EU member? That's one difficult question. Another from Klaus Prumper, who is a freelance journalist, and it's on how will the common agricultural policy need to change when Ukraine gets access to funds on its way to membership? I leave those two questions with you, Minister, for the moment.
Okay. Let me start with Bosnia and Herzegovina. We all know the very unique and complex constitutional framework for Bosnia and Herzegovina. In fact, President Christodoulidis, ahead of the presidency, in his tour of countries, he started from the Western Balkans and from Serbia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, precisely to send that message of support to both countries' European path. For Bosnia-Herzegovina, it is true that as things stand right now, there is a stalemate. What we have conveyed and what we are working on with the European Commission is how we can actively assist the country in moving forward. And we would be ready also to initiate discussions for the adoption of the country's negotiating framework. This, of course, is dependent on Bosnia and Herzegovina implementing a number of preconditions, one of which right now is appointing a chief negotiator. This is one of the key conditions. And then the second one would be finalizing and adopting key judicial reform laws that meet the European standards. As things stand now, these are the two core issues that would then allow us to proceed to the next stage of the negotiations. Now, with regards to the funding and the MFF, we know that the current system, the current budget, is a budget for EU27, and both the new MFF would need to make provisions also for the possibility of enlargement. What we are currently waiting at the Council is the pre-enlargement reviews that would address a number of issues, including the institutional issues, internal issues, budget issues, the impact also that enlargement would have on specific policies, including on the common agricultural policy. What the Commission has done in the current MFF proposal that is being discussed and on which the Cyprus Presidency will need to work on as a key priority to deliver a second negotiating framework, the proposal is for a unified approach on the financial instruments for external relations, including, of course, on enlargement. What we need to also ensure is that the new MFF will uphold the importance of enlargement as a geopolitical necessity, and this, of course, should be reflected both politically but also in the allocation of resources to support the candidate countries. And this funding should also be attached to conditionality, strong conditionality on reform, on alignment, to ensure fairness, effectiveness, and also credibility. So adhering to this performance-based model will be important. The impact on the budget, this requires us to have the pre-enlargement reviews to see exactly what the impact will be on existing policies, and we will drive the discussions forward in the Council on that basis.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that. I have several more questions, but perhaps I have two more. We don't have that much time. One is on energy, and it's from Fergal McNamara, who's an IIEA member and co-chair of our climate and energy group. And he said, in your remark, Minister, you mentioned energy autonomy. Could you expand on this further, as it is especially interesting since both Cyprus and Ireland are both islands on the periphery of Europe? And another quite different one, but I think there is some interest in this from Toby Vogel of Democratization Policy Council, Brussels. Does the Cypriot Presidency plan to advance Kosovo's application for candidate status? Obviously, this is asked in the question in the context that Cyprus, among the group of five, does not actually recognize Kosovo's independence. But if I could leave those two with you, Minister, the energy and the Kosovo question.
Look, on Kosovo, I will start with Kosovo, and Cyprus is one of the member states, yes, that does not recognize. Despite non-recognition, we have signaled, and in fact, our political director of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs will be visiting Kosovo in the coming weeks, and we will also be inviting Kosovo together with all our enlargement partners to the informal General Affairs Council that will take place in Cyprus. We will be extending an invitation. We have signaled that we would be ready to engage constructively with Kosovo on the regional aspects, primarily on the implementation of the Western Balkans growth plan. I want to remind also that it was the stabilization and association agreement that was signed with Kosovo in the past, and also on visa issues. This was done, it started during the previous Cyprus presidency. We drove that agenda forward, and then it was completed at the council. But we would be ready to engage constructively with Kosovo during our presidency, both with regards to the growth plans, but also working with our member states, with our partners, on taking this forward. Now, with regards to the reference to energy autonomy, yes, this is an issue very close to heart to Cyprus because we are on the geographical periphery of the European Union. We are an island member state. We are not connected to the energy grid of the European Union, and we've seen, as a result of the Russian invasion against Ukraine, how critical it is for the European Union to diversify and pursue the goal of energy autonomy. And this is also one of the reasons that during the Cyprus presidency, we are also going to put at the forefront strengthening relations between the European Union and the Eastern Mediterranean, because we believe that this region has an important role to play with regards to the European Union's energy diversification and finding alternative energy routes. Now, with regards to the Western Balkans and energy, yes, we need to consider ideas to provide viable alternatives to Russia, bypassing Russian gas supplies, including in the energy sector. And, for example, in the case of Serbia, we have strongly welcomed the fact that a working group on energy between the European Commission and Serbia has been formed precisely to discuss issues that pertain to energy and what are the possible alternatives in this regard. We have had also developments very recently with regards to to Ukraine and how we can link it to energy in Europe. And I think this is an important element of the work we do with our enlargement partners in the broader context of our pursuit for energy autonomy.
Thank you. That sounds very interesting, particularly as Ireland is on the other side and with the same energy concerns. I have a question also from Eugenia Hanafi from the IIEA. Do you think that an enlarged union would be effective in promoting its values of democracy, human rights and rule of law beyond the European neighbourhood countries, such as post-Soviet Central Asian countries? I think that's an area that is of interest, the Central Asian countries, Minister. So if you think that is would be a positive development out of enlargement. And one other question, if I may, from R.A. Canlar, PhD researcher, Maynooth University. This is a bit closer to home, I think. What do you think about the possibility of resolution of the Cyprus issue with the US and the Trump administration's current wish to resolve conflicts globally? But I think there was a very positive meeting between the heads of Cyprus and Turkish administration recently. So perhaps that is a fairly interesting question for you with regard to the resolution of the Cypriot issue.
Mm-hmm. So with regards to the Cyprus question, President Christodoulidis, since day one of assuming office, has made a consistent effort for negotiations to resume within the UN framework that calls for a bizonal, bicommunal federation. We are now in what is the longest pause in peace negotiations on the Cyprus question. And that is something that we understand is not positive because we know, and we know also because of developments in Ukraine, because of developments in our immediate neighborhood, that there are no frozen conflicts. And our number one priority is for negotiations under the UN auspices to resume. We are very pleased that the UN Secretary General, in the midst of these major conflicts from Ukraine to the Middle East and beyond, has chosen to engage again with the Cyprus question. And we had so far two meetings, two expanded meetings, expanded meaning President Christodoulidis, the Turkish Cypriot leader, but also the three guarantor powers, Greece, Turkey, and the UK. We have had two expanded meetings under the UN Secretary General in order to pave the way for resumption of negotiations. We now have a new Turkish Cypriot leader that has in the past expressed a position in favor of the agreed framework for a solution, as opposed to the position that has been expressed by Turkey for a so-called two-state solution, which is contrary to what the UN Security Council resolutions state. We believe that EU engagement on the Cyprus question to support the UN efforts could be instrumental. Why? Because the EU has the tools and the incentives to incentivize Turkey to return to the negotiating table. On our side, we have also signaled that we would be ready to consider, and we have done it, what we can do on EU-Turkey relations in order to create hand in hand with the Cyprus question, the incentives to have progress in both, because progress on the Cyprus question is directly linked with progress on EU-Turkey relations, and we have had developments. For example, it's for the first time since 2019 that the Turkish foreign minister has been invited at a Gimnich meeting, at the informal meeting of the ministers of foreign affairs. We plan to do the same during our presidency, to extend an invitation to join the informal Foreign Affairs Council meeting. What is key is that Turkey engages, and this needs to be a message that the European Union, that our EU partners consistently convey to Turkey. The President of the European Commission, as I'm sure you know, appointed a special envoy on the Cyprus question, ex-Commissioner Johannes Hahn, who is working with all parties in order to create the conditions for resumption of negotiations. But, you know, reunification of Cyprus would not only be transformative for Cyprus and for all its citizens, it would be also transformative for the region. It would send a resounding message of peace in a region that desperately needs it. And it would also be transformative for EU-Turkey relations as well. Now, on an enlarged union and the message it sends, I think I touched on it in my introductory remarks. Enlargement is also about sending the message that we still remain an attractive model, that and enlargement is about democracy. It is about rule of law. It is about the Copenhagen criteria. And if we are still attracting countries to join the European Union, it means that these countries, or it should mean that they aspire to meet these standards and these criteria. And this in and of itself creates a dynamic that spills beyond the candidate countries. With the Central Asian countries, we are seeing a lot of developments recently. I recently participated in a council meeting in Luxembourg with Uzbekistan, for example. Last year, we had the EU Central Asia Summit. A point we make to these countries, and we understand the importance of the region, we understand the importance of the Black Sea, and we've had recently the Black Sea strategy as well on behalf of the European Union. What is important is that the countries of this region understand that adherence to international law and respect to the territorial integrity and sovereignty of states, and this includes member states, it's a prerequisite to engagement with the European Union. Unfortunately, in Central Asia, we see as part of Turkey's policy, unfortunately, to upgrade the secessionist entity in the occupied areas of the Republic of Cyprus, we see a push in Central Asian countries for them to upgrade relations with the secessionist entity, contrary to UN Security Council resolutions. What we are doing is through the EU conveying the message, but also we are working bilaterally with the countries of Central Asia to enhance relations with Uzbekistan, with Tajikistan, and so on. Also as a way to bring them closer to the European Union, to bring them closer to our value system.
Minister, thank you very much indeed. I regret very much to say that all of a sudden we've reached our deadline, and for a number of questioners, I'm afraid that has come far too soon. We didn't get around to quite a number of the questions. But I thank you most sincerely for a really rich and interesting discussion, your address and discussion. I think we covered a lot of areas, and we see the challenges that confront the Cypriot presidency, but we also see the opportunity. And I think it came across very clearly your determination and those of your colleagues to advance the agenda, not only in enlargement, but in all the areas that you will be tackling that come from enlargement, but also the other challenges such as defence and MFF. And it just remains, I think, to wish you every possible success in your presidency. As you say, it's coming very close with 37 days. And needless to say, we will be working closely with you as we follow on and maintain the momentum that we know Cyprus will generate in your 6 months. So thank you on behalf of all of us for being with us today. And I thank you to all our those who are participating in the webinar. So thank you again, and goodbye for now. I hope we can hear from you again during the presidency. Thank you,
Certainly.
Minister.
Thank you so much.